Hi guys, welcome back to the channel and the series where I'm talking about all things travel nursing. If you're new here, my name is Olivia, and for the past 3 years I've worked as a travel nurse full-time while living out of my RV with my husband and my 2 rescue dogs. And if you happen to be able to see a dog in the corner over here, her name is Stella. This video is dedicated to 4 tips that I think every nurse should know when getting into travel nursing. So what I mean by that is, you're a nurse that's decided, okay, travel nursing is something I definitely want to pursue. These tips are what you're going to want to keep in mind when going forward. The first tip made it to the top of my list for a reason. Please, please, please keep this in mind. When you're excited about getting into travel nursing, emotions can be high. I can speak from experience. I was anxious and I just wanted to have any and all information I could get my hands on. And of course, I jumped to the internet. You can type in travel nurse agencies into Google and tons will pop up because there are tons available. And all of them offer different things. I'm going to talk about how to decide on a travel nursing agency in a future video. But just know there are a lot of websites that you can scroll through, and there's nothing wrong with that. The tip that I want you to keep in mind is not to give any contact information to those agencies unless you are seriously considering getting a profile set up with them. And that is because once they have your contact information, there will be a recruiter that will be calling, texting, and or emailing you constantly. And sometimes that starts happening from agencies you've never heard of before. I'm 3 years into this and I still get weekly calls, texts, and emails from recruiters interested in getting me set up on a new travel nursing gig. And I think there's something behind the scenes where if you plug your information into certain agencies, they will give your information to other agencies. It's overwhelming for someone that's just starting out, and it's annoying. Number 2 on my list is to keep in mind the difference between net weekly income and gross weekly income. And to completely go back to the basics, let's define those 2 terms. When you're on these travel nursing websites or apps, there can be search engines where you can search for jobs exactly as it sounds. You can plug in your nurse specialty, the type of shift that you want, maybe the state that you're interested in traveling to, and contracts that are looking for nurses to fill them will pop up, and those contracts are specific to the agency. Some healthcare facilities have a relationship with a specific agency where they will only fill their needs through travelers that are set up with that agency, but that's not always the case. Sometimes hospitals or facilities will just say, okay, we need travelers, here you go, and you'll see that position on a whole bunch of different agencies, but the pay could be different dependent on the agency too. What I want you to keep in mind on travel agency websites is that they will likely list out the gross weekly income, and that is the amount of money per week without taxes and other things taken out of your paycheck. The net is what you will likely see when you go to accept a contract, when a contract is presented to you to sign. So just learn the difference of that and kind of keep that in the back of your mind so you know what's realistic when you look at those job boards and see super high paying things, because a lot of times recruiters will get online and advertise the gross income. Obviously, taxes can be different from person to person, so they need something that they can post that's consistent. Keep that in mind. Net is what is actually going into your pocket after taxes and things like that are removed. Tip number 3 on my list is knowing that you're going to have to set aside some time to get established with an agency before you can apply to jobs. I think this sounds a little bit backward because the process of getting a travel contract is a lot different from a typical job. This makes more sense when you think about it super literally. You're not going to fly or drive to a different state miles and miles away at this contract that you want to interview face to face. So what happens is the agency is compiling all your information to present to the facility that you're trying to get a contract at. We're going to talk about just getting started in general. They're going to want information from you like immunization records, your certifications like your advanced basic or pediatric life support. I have my stroke scale certification on there, your licenses, things like that. And that is just basic information about you, your skill set that they present to the hospital or healthcare facility that you're trying to get a job at. Then the hospital or healthcare facility give you an automatic offer that you'll hear about through your nurse recruiter, or they can call you to get in over the phone interview. And I'm going to talk more about interviews in a separate video. So just know that you'll likely hear about an offer through your nurse recruiter specifically, or the facility will call you directly for that interview. Another thing that takes some time when getting set up with a travel agency is completing what's typically called a skills list or a checklist. These skills or checklists are going to be specific to a type of nursing that you could be doing as a travel nurse. Usually these take a little bit to complete. It's not a pass or fail thing, it's just kind of you ranking yourself. I feel like these are hard to explain, but once you've seen them all. You're ranking yourself based off of your experience with that specific type of specialty of nursing. And it's broken down by body system. So to give an example, I had previous staff experience as a progressive care nurse. So I took one of these skills lists for progressive care nursing, and then I took one for med-surg nursing as well, and I've taken one for telemetry and things like that. But it's broken down by specialty of nursing, and then each one specifically goes through questions about different systems of the body. To give some examples of the questions, they're not even really questions, but to give some examples of these, it'll talk about medications, procedures, different diagnoses, and you have to just go through and rank yourself and essentially say, I have no experience with this, I have minimal experience with this, I am confident to complete this on my own, or I am so experienced in this that I could teach somebody. And all of that information basically gives your recruiter a number, and that number gives them a good idea on how proficient that you are in that specialty in general, and that can be helpful for nurse managers to see how that number weighs against the typical types of patients and procedures and things that they see at that job. The fourth and last tip of this video is to have an idea of what you're going to do for housing before you start applying for jobs. It's good to have an idea of what you want to do for housing ahead of time so that you can narrow things down and get things moving quickly. Because once you apply to a travel contract, things can move really, really fast. You can get an offer within a few hours to a few days, but once you have that offer, recruiters will often tell you that you have 1 business day to decline or accept the position. For our situation, we were living out of an RV, so what we had to get set up ahead of time was an RV park. My husband and I decided to get an RV before my very first travel contract for a lot of different reasons. We had dogs. We didn't want to have to worry about acclimating to new places or shedding or things like that. And we didn't want to have to pack up and unpack all the time. But you definitely don't have to have some kind of big investment like an RV to travel nurse. It's just what we've done. What I mean by saying to have an established idea is just to know, am I going to go through agency housing? Am I going to do an extended stay hotel or Airbnb? Or do I have an RV, or do I have a van to do van life, or that kind of thing? Once you know what you're going to do, it's going to make things easier to hone in on and get organized with. Obviously, I can't speak on experience to anything but RV life. It's what I've done the entire 3 years. But before we decided on buying an RV, I was kind of like, what do I do? Where do I start? So I was thinking about all the other options. And one thing that I had kind of heard about that I was keeping in the back of my mind is that a lot of people do not do agency housing. And if you think about it, the agency is who's going to be setting you up with housing. The agency is who's paying for the housing. So they may not be looking for the most expensive, extravagant, or nice places for you to stay so that they can save money. That sounds bad, but I heard it and it made sense to me. But I'm not totally crapping on it because I don't have experience, and I have heard some rough stories about people that have to find their own housing every single time, and that can be a lot of added stress too. So those are all my tips for this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions or ideas for future videos involving travel nursing, please leave a comment below, and be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a video about this series, as we're going to dive into more and more topics involving travel nursing. Goodbye!